How's it going? It's Matt Tomorrow here. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing to my channel. Let's give people a couple minutes before they come in. Press one in the chat before you can hear, so that way I can know that you can hear me. Thanks so much for coming through. Let's give people a couple minutes to come through, so that way we can talk about this issue. So that way you can know what these type of conversations are like when you have them with people who claim to be so-called pro-black. We need to be able to break this down. What's actually happening here? When you're actually talking to somebody who want to kind of encroach on your male agency by forcing you to accept unacceptable things. What's going on, Truism? What's going on, Dallas Cowboys? All right, so let's give people a couple minutes to come in, man. So hold on a second while we go. Get some people come in. All right, we're gonna get started in about 2 minutes here. Give some people time to file in. Thank you for coming through. Like the video upon coming into the room so that way we can keep this going. We're gonna wait till we get about 40 in here, then we get started. All right. Mm. Like the video, mom, coming in. We're gonna get started in 1 minute here. All right, we're close enough. All right, I want to thank everybody for coming through. Thank you for like, sharing, commenting, and subscribing to my videos thus far. Today, we're going to talk about a particular conversation that I had a back and forth with somebody online who wanted to try to Conor McGregor their way into a type of debate. But this is why you have a conversation with people to see where they're headed at before you actually debate them. Because there's a lot of people out there who just want to talk to be talking, and they don't really have any type of conversation to bring to the table. And their actual, thanks for posting your Patreon, Doug. The actual thing that they actually bring to the table is a whole bunch of misunderstanding about the topic that they expect you, the person, to get them up to speed with during a debate, and then you actually agree to agree or agree to disagree. You have to understand that, and most times in America, a lot of people have a grave level of actual ignorance when they approach any type of issue. And most times people think that they get to emotionalize their way into a conversation rather than just having one from the standpoint of not knowing anything. Most people actually just want to show up and actually debate things that don't need to happen. What's going on, nameless protagonist? So it's like this isn't a hard conversation to have, but people need to understand that when they're trying to get you to restrict yourself to a certain marketplace of women or even potential outcomes, you have to realize that this is no longer our responsibility. What's going on, Rollo? And you need to recognize that if these people were to have this attitude, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, it would mean something for a community. But at the end of the day, they're trying to be a community when they know they don't have anything to offer. What's going on, Charles Merchant? But the problem that I'm actually having here is that you see these people show up everywhere. And I'm just going to call them cowards from now on because apparently they understand the hell out of female agency. What's going on, Trey? And somehow they don't understand male agency at the same time. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. All right, so let's get started with this. I had one of these people. This guy's probably in his 50s. He said he was older than I am, so I'm assuming his 50s because he didn't seem to talk like a 40-year-old. So I was trying to talk to this individual, and he seemed to think that black pill is somehow incel or you can't get women or any of that other stuff. Like none of that stuff makes sense. So it's like, dude, you're not having a conversation. What's going on, Sandstar? In front of a guy who's not well versed on the topics and subject. But what these people do is they come in from a place of ignorance and try to monopolize the conversation when they come through. Like I don't understand how people could walk around thinking that other people are to work on their behalf, but at the end of the day, they actually want people to not actually engage in their level of agency when they have power, just as the same way the woman did. So I played my game of 20 questions with this person. So I asked him for his definition. Since he wanted to debate me on black pill, I'm not sure why people keep labeling me this. I think black pill is probably the best thing that you could possibly be because you're gonna looking for things of where they are in an actual environment and make decisions. I'm a business owner. Most business owner and people who are high ranking in the military are all considered black pill. Period. By the way the pills are set up, that's what it's going to be. Because we're not going to take sides. We're just going to look at the most truth that we possibly can and make a decision accordingly. We're not going to give a damn about skin color or the type of woman. No, it's just that if you don't fit a certain type of narrative, I'm just going to move on without you. Like, and that scares a lot of people. The reason why the black pill scares a lot of people is because you get to dehumanize them right off the rip if they don't fit a certain type of framework of working within the real world. Because see, a lot of people with an emotional mind state, they hate working within the real world. They hate having to take a stand on things. They hate, truly hate, actually taking a stand in one direction or another. Yeah, it does sound to me. What I'll do, Judge, is I'll post the link in the chat and then you can join them. So it's like this. I asked this person for his definition of red pill. because whenever a person starts to want to talk about pills, I just start to ask them questions to see if the logic inside their head works properly, to see if their logic works, like to see if I should continue this conversation with this person. So pretty much, this person thought that being black pill, listen, he wants to actually have a conversation about a concept he don't understand. Until he understands it, then he wants to debate. I'm like, dude, that's not how debate works. This is why I asked him for his definitions up front. And he told me that, well, and he said this very word: I feel black pill, hate all black people. I think that they can't get black women. And I think that if they were to have more ass previous in their life, that they would be better off as people, and that they would accept the circumstances. I'm like, dude, that is not what black pill is. No one on here who claims to be black pill, BGS is one of them, has never said that's what black pill is. Nobody, even Grant said that he's black pill. You never heard him say no shit like that. So it's like, I'm like, dude, your definition is based on the fact that female validation and that the end goal of sex is somehow how you're to be judged as a man within the environment. And I'm like, dude, look, the women run the environment. So if you're saying that access to a woman is somehow going to sway your opinion one way or the other about what reality is just based off access to sex, then there's a problem with you, not really everybody else. And what's going on, Ghost? So I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what he did. He came in with shaming language and everything else. I'm like, dude, look, this is your understanding of something that you misunderstand. Me personally, I can see what's going on here everywhere around here. So I'm like, dude, listen, things that happen within an environment, within a culture, goes off a certain pattern. And once you notice the pattern that repeats itself over and over again, it is up to you to make sure that you don't fall victim to the paradigm that they're actually talking about. Yeah, exactly. Aegon, you'll be assimilated into the phalanx. Exactly. So the person comes in with the misunderstanding of what black pill is. He comes through with shaming language trying to get me to bend to his will. Then he questions my masculinity to see if I'm loyal to his concept. And then after I am not loyal to his concept, he wants to dismiss me as somebody who's not loyal to the actual race. And I'm like, hold on a second. This is your problem that you're coming to another human being with. How is it possible that a person exercising his own male agency and choice is running into somebody who wants to force him to make another choice on the other person's behalf that does not help the actual man who they're trying to indict into the actual said choice? He acted kind of shocked and confused because he expect people to think that they would immediately mortgage their masculinity for the idea of sex, not actual sex, but the idea of sex, the idea of respect, of a nondescript woman. You don't know what she looks like, you don't know what she brings to the table, anything. Would you do all these things for the respect of a woman within this environment? And I was just shocked. And I'm like, dude, listen. And then, he started to throw that community word around. I'm like, dude, listen. What area of the United States did he live? And he said the West. So I'm like, okay, that's great. You live in the West. Is the community what you speak of based on skin color, or is it based on an individual's ability to provide resources in an environment? And with those resources, that person picks a place to live. Now, once I said that, he told me that I was playing a classism type thing with him. I'm like, no, I'm telling you how communities actually work within the United States. Because this person has an actual framework of how community works inside of his head. But once you start to talk about how a community works in the real world, these people somehow fold up very quickly. I'm like, dude, listen, it doesn't matter where you live. Because when you're talking to people like this, they have a very emotional type of framework. So you have to take him through the levels of logic to show him that this stuff doesn't really work all that well on its own. It works well within the echo chamber, but once you leave the echo chamber, you have to defend this stuff on its own and by itself, and it does not work. So I explained to him how communities are made up. There's a tax basis, there's a structure, there's a minimum level of income that it takes to be part of a community. Those are minimum standards. So when you base the minimum standards of a community based off of what a person looks like and not what they bring to the table, you actually have destroyed the actual idea of community by itself. So I'm looking at this individual and like, dude, you want to talk to me about an issue that you don't understand. And as long as you go down this roadmap, you realize that not only does this person not understand this, they don't understand a whole lot more other things according to the same problem. I'm like, dude, look, you don't understand what black pill is. You don't understand what a community is. So he gave me his definition of community. His definition of community meant everybody of a certain shade that was considered black. And I'm like, dude, nobody acts and do things like that. And I told him that the way that he was coming across the actual thing, that it doesn't make any sense how he was trying to come about the actual issue. I'm like, dude, listen, you're trying to have a community without minimum standards. You think that a woman choosing to respect a man within an environment is the level of masculinity to be shown within that environment. So I had to take him further down this rabbit hole to let him know how wrong he was. So I had him to explain who are the people in this mythical community that he talks about. He was like, oh, the people, the women, the children, and everything else. And I'm like, okay, you didn't say man nowhere in that explanation. So a man part of the community? And this person just paused for a second and he didn't quite understand how he didn't understand that. He just wrote himself out of the script of the actual community to which he's trying to defend. And I just sat there and just waited for a second. I'm like, do you not understand that the community that you're fighting for is not a community that you're going to be or have any other power in? And he still didn't understand the question at all. So I'm like, look, the concerns of the people in the community to which you are talking about are not the concerns of men who exercise male agency. You have to realize these people have made choices in their life that led up to where they are. And this is nobody else's problem but the people who are in said community. The concerns of people in their community of what he's talking about are pretty much short term. They don't have anything to do with what normal and regular people of anywhere else wants to do. These people have decided on their own to make all these decisions without the input of anybody. And now that they're at the end of their rope, they want all this help from everybody else in society. So I go through a bunch of different examples of if you ran a business, how this wouldn't work. And so the same individual pretty much came to the conversation unequipped to have a conversation about the actual idea that he knows nothing about. But somehow he's fighting on behalf of people who he's trying to help. Like none of this stuff works. It makes no sense. And then he went to tell me that I suffer from black pill rage. Like I've never even heard this word before. He don't even know what black pill is, but somehow I suffer from black pill rage because I can't get a black woman within this environment. So I need to go somewhere else to get someone else. And I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I'm supposed to do. As a man of agency, if I don't like these upgraded women here locally, I just go out and get what I want to wherever I want to. And he still seemed to misunderstand the point of that because no matter what I did as a human being, I was supposed to put other people first before my actual best interest first. And none of that really made any sense to me. Those are the things that I just had a real problem with. Yeah, I mean, so he just didn't know what black pill was, came up with a term called black pill rage, and he turned around and tried to make it look like, well, you would feel much better about the situation if you would have got um, better access within the environment. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? This has nothing to do with the things that are going on here. Yeah, I know, Goshen. Hey, man. I'm just hearing people just come up with stuff, but it's anything else other than making sense of the actual problem that's actually happening in society, which is I have my choice and I'm not picking said people for whatever reason. I don't have to do that. But according to this person, not only was he's going to be able to shame and language me down into picking something that I didn't want, but he actually was just going to overcome me with that lack of logic, and I was just going to be on his side because some nondescript woman and her bad choices would have been the actual benefit of it. And I don't understand these things. Not only was he's going to be able to shame and language me. I mean, I just don't understand these things. They're hard to figure out. So we continued the conversation through email, and I gave him my thoughts on the actual things that he was talking about. I explained to him what actually Black Pill was. It was just an acceptance of lived reality within the situation. There's really no dysfunction associated with it because you accept the situation for what it is. He rejected my definition even though he didn't understand the actual concept. And I explained to him the actual responsibilities of somebody who's red, who who's black pill. I'm like, someone who's actually black pill doesn't really care about the mistakes people made within an environment, because if they actually wanted to learn from those lessons, they clearly would have by now. And it's not a person's responsibility to actually care more about the situation than they have, right? So it's like, so you come to the conversation with a misunderstanding of how things work. You assign definition to things that you don't understand. Now you want to control the narrative to the point to where you want to point my level of male agency into the directions of things that he would like me for me to do on his behalf. And I'm like, dude, none of this stuff makes any sense. So I go into the responsibilities and the track record of somebody who's black pill. They really don't give a shit about that. But at the end of the day, like, a person who's black pill isn't supposed to care about all these things. They're here to just to see the observed truth when in the actual environment. But to this person, I can't think any of those things because I'm supposed to put female agency above my own agency, and I'm supposed to actually care more about her actually making it in society than I am making it in society. And none of that stuff really makes any sense. It don't make any sense. It's ridiculous. So he proceeded to call me a dysfunctional individual because I didn't show this love and deference for nondescript people. And I'm like, dude, how are you so pro black to the point where you dismiss male agency, but somehow you want me to deal with the outcome of female agency? But sometimes there's a lot of people here who have this narrative inside their head that they're going to protect the woman's interests so much that they don't really care about what the man get out of the actual situation itself. None of that stuff actually makes any type of sense overall. And this is how you know whether you're dealing with a person who's presenting a narrative or whether you're dealing with a person who's actually trying to have a real conversation about a real problem. So he kept coming at me with the needs of the many prevail over the needs of the few argument, which is a good argument. But I had to counter with the needs of the few that became the many are the needs that nobody needs to worry about at all. Because at the end of the day, these people were not the majority of black America. They were not the majority of anything. These people come from generations of weekend warrior parties that we now have to deal with. And that's how they got to be the majority of people in America. Like, they were never the majority of people in America. If that was the case, we never would have had a George Washington Carver or any of this stuff coming up. Because most of the stuff was based on meritocracy, and we actually done better when we was closer to each other as actual people than we are split apart right now. But when you have one half of the relationship who decide to go off and do their own thing for 40 something years, you really can't bring this person back into the house and call them a co-equal. You know, you shouldn't even be trying to tea with these people at all, period. So then he said something very interesting that I did not understand and that I did not expect. This person said that he was a communist. I did not know where this came from or how this got into the conversation, but he was explaining to me to his communist philosophy. I'm like, hold on a second. How could you, in your misunderstanding, would claim to be communist? Like communist has a minimum standard that they would like to replicate among the society. So if you have somebody who's stupid as shit who claims to be communist, so I'm like, oh, he see everybody as an equal so long as they dumb as shit. And I'm like, I don't want that brand of communism. Thank for this $5 super chat, Dollar Washer. Blue Pill 101, keep coming back to the table no matter what the females and red power 100. Yes. So I'm like, dude, listen, there's a difference between communism that works and communism that doesn't. It's the same with socialism. There's a difference between socialism that works and socialism that doesn't. What the key thing is in both of those scenarios is minimum standards. I'm like, dude, communism in China look different than communism in Cuba. Socialism in Denmark looks different than socialism in Venezuela. So I'm like, dude, listen, I actually know all this stuff because I know this stuff. But when you're talking to people who's not actually interested in learning the truth of any kind, they're actually quite used to smoking a lot of BS past people because they could start talking into these a lot of isms and try to compare them as if they are the same. But I say simply that these things are nowhere near the same because they're actually different things for a reason and they have different definitions for a reason. But if a person's trying to actually present them as if they're the same model, and then that's when you have to step back. So now you go from having a conversation with somebody who's sane to having a conversation with somebody who's insane and who needs to be brought up to speed on everything that they're actually talking about. So I asked this individual to make sure there was nothing wrong with his head. I asked him, do you believe in arranged marriages? Can you guess the answer that this individual gave me? He said that he does not believe in arranged marriages. I had to throw my hands up. I'm like, dude, the exact circumstance that you're actually lobbying for is an arranged marriage on some level. He would have to admit that. So then I had to go back and forth with this individual that no, an arranged marriage means this. I actually believe in arranged marriages because I don't want the environment picking who I'm going to be handing down my actual resources to. I actually would like to be doing that picking myself. So this person said that he don't believe in arranged marriages. I'm like, dude, listen, man, this is sounding awful strange. You're trying to consign me to make a certain choice, but you don't believe in arranged marriages. Oh yeah, check for you. It is a hell of a lot more. But for people who don't have any status in society, they don't like arranged marriages because it leaves them consigned to people who don't have any value throughout society. And that's normally how that works. So as soon as you drill down on most of these guys who are actually think that they're pro black, the only thing that they are pro lack of male agency. They're okay with all her choices, but they do not want you making choices for yourself so long as you leave out what those people don't want you to have. I just don't understand it. God, it makes no sense to me whenever I hear these things. But that's just the way it is sometimes, man. You're always going to find people who walk in with a ton of terms but don't know anything about what they're talking about. He didn't know what black pill was. He don't understand what a community is. He don't care about minimum standards. But somehow he wants to see a thriving community even though he don't understand the definition of that. And his actual idea of black pill rage was the inability to find a suitable mate. So you go into this anger and check out. That's unbelievable, man. So his idea of freedom is that I don't have any. Somehow you have more rights than I do, so much so that you're going to tell me what to do with the results of my life, but this person would never place the same restrictions on the woman in the same environment. They only want you to deal with the choices that she's made before. And I'm like, how on earth is that fair to the man? We understand how fair that is to the actual woman. That makes a lot of sense for her. It makes a lot of sense for her. Because for her, none of her choices and decisions have any actual consequences associated with it. The reason why they don't have any consequences associated with it, because they got dumb dudes like this who go out here and try to force people in my position to marry somebody in their position. And somehow I'm being called a traitor for making the best decisions that I possibly can. And somehow she is to be rewarded for making the worst decision that she possibly could. So it's like, I don't understand how there could be a problem here. The only thing I'm doing is just exercising my choices later on in life that the person exercised earlier in theirs. So you need to understand that with male agency and male choice, you're not supposed to be bringing on all this cultural baggage along with you. Your decisions in your life are supposed to be yours for your benefit. Her sexual choices and options that she made in her life was for her own benefit. So, how in the world is it a problem when a man exercises his level of choice because it takes man a long time to be able to make choices? But when you're talking to these people who call themselves pro black, the only thing that they're pro is men not having any agency, and that our male agency is to be taken from us and to be given to people who didn't make the appropriate choices in life. And I just don't think that that's the case. It's amazing how men are supposed to show so much more care for a community that they didn't help build, but we are ultimately responsible for actually cleaning up. I just don't understand the concept here. Somehow the concept of freedom is so lost on people that they don't understand what they're actually saying when they're actually saying. But they want to Conor McGregor their way into an actual debate so that way we can spend most of the debate getting his actual idea of what he's talking about up to speed before we can move along and talk about the things we need to talk about, which is the reason why they're there in the first place. But there's a lot of people who get by in black American society doing stuff like this because nobody really tells them that you need to go and do a little bit more research about what you talk about before you start talking. Because here within Black America, intentions mean everything, and proof means actual nothing. And hard work doesn't mean anything unless they can benefit off of it. This is why you can have so many people within the environment talk a whole bunch of nonsense and kind of get by until they actually run into a person where they actually have to prove something of worth before we can actually go forward with a conversation. And those people are just not prepared to have those type of discussions. And you have to get that this is not your fault. This is their fault. And here's the thing. It's his dream. How come this individual cannot go with his dream and fulfill it himself? This individual actually needs another person to work on his behalf to fulfill his dream for him. And somehow this is equal to everybody within the environment. Like, look, I could clearly see what the woman gets out of it. I just don't see what the man gets out of it. I just don't understand. I mean, we seem to understand female agency and what they do in the environment just fine. But somehow we don't understand male agency at all. And it's kind of like we deliberately misunderstand it so that way we can make other points within the same environment. I just don't understand it. If a person who claims to be pro black, they actually should have a track record of results to make that claim. You can't just be coming out here putting on the cape of pro black and then expecting everybody else within the environment to actually act out your pro blackness for you. Because that wouldn't make the actual person making the claim pro black. That would make me pro black for finishing the job for said person. So you have to understand that this is nothing much more than a person not having any type of control within the environment and a person who's just acting out their own blue pill rage in the environment that they don't have control over. But they're not acting out blue pill rage so that way they can get things solved within their life. They're trying to draw you off sides of male agency so you can do things that are not based on male agency. And that's pretty much the problem here. But it's like, look, if this person, this mythical person that he's talking about, was 15 years old, they still had time to turn their life around. They still had time to, before they actually ran all of their vitality into the ground, that would be the time to talk to these people. But after that point, it's a lost cause. It's very much so a lost cause. And it's truly not your responsibility. So I'm not sure why would it actually need to be a discussion about what black pill is or not when you have individuals who don't understand male agency. Because most of these people who come to you within this environment, who try to draw you off sides to make a decision that's not in your best interest, has never tried to hold the actual woman in the environment to any type of account as they're trying to hold the man to in the environment. And that's just the long and the short of it. It truly makes no sense whatsoever. And this is why you have, like, any man within this environment who would call somebody an incel, that's a person who should not be taken seriously within this environment. Because people who call people incels are very okay with dating coaches and 50-year-old dudes who got broken homes trying to teach people about women. Like, how do you have both of those things going on at the same time within the same environment? So you have to realize that on average, people can't get what they want to out of the environment. This is why they have to go to another environment to get their needs met. So you have to realize it's not a man's job to over pursue, over improve for things that are not improving on the other side. That's ridiculous. But it actually is your job to get your own stuff together so that way you can make the best choices that you possibly can going forward. What's going on, Arnold? And that's your only obligation within this environment is to make those type of decisions for yourself within the environment. Because nothing else is going to be able to work outside of that. And you ever notice how most of the people who talk about community don't have anything to actually offer the community except for the benefit off of it? It's just like how most women claim to be community minded, but they don't counsel or try to fix anything within the environment that they're actually are trying to benefit from. You see, both of these people who are environment based, they've taken up positions that they don't belong at. I think that being community minded means that you have some type of track record that you want to see repeated, that you have some type of household displayed that you want to see repeated, that you have some type of family structure that you want to see repeated, that you have some actual results that you want to be repeated. So, what we've done is that we've allowed people with the greatest of intentions to act as the people who are community minded, while the people who should be community minded are just left in the dust. And that's just where we are with this thing, man. Male agency really isn't that hard, dude. But for some reason, we are where we are based on nobody else's problem of their own. And I'm just telling you, man, that this is just not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to get your stuff together and to deal with the person who has the least amount of problems in society once you do get your stuff together. I'm just telling you straight up that you shouldn't even be trying to have this conversation with these type of hucksters who come through because they always come through with this community minded talk. But once you get down to what a community is, they just want a community where women benefit. And I don't think that's a good idea. I actually think that a community is actually bigger and better and more than that. Yeah, thank for the $4 super chat, Marco Grande. Yeah, you're correct. A change of environment is easier than changing the mindset. I can't change the mindset of people who've already been too far down this path. And this is not the job of anybody else within the society to be doing the job on these people's behalf. They made their decision. They have to live with it. I'm going to make my decision and I'm going to have to live with that. And you cannot expect anything better than what you bring to the table. And if it's nothing, you're going to easily get bought out. There's nothing wrong with saying to people within an environment, I'm sorry, miss, but you just don't have a competitive level of circumstances compared to everybody else here. What's wrong with that? She would say the same to you, but for some reason that we want to throw, always want to throw male agency out the window when it comes to making people feel comfortable that we should be making feel comfortable. None of this stuff is actually going to work until you pick up the leadership mantle and go into another direction without these people. That's the only way this is going to be able to work because we've waited long enough for these people to choose proper choices. So now it's time for you to choose proper choices for yourself. You don't have to wait on anybody. They actually betrayed you first. And they're sitting around not making a woman spear, trying to correct their own issues. They're actually looking for yet another compromised man within this space to retire from. And you gotta stop. You gotta stop thinking that that stuff is the right move because it just isn't. Sorry, man. I've been on here long enough. Drop this link in the chat. If don't nobody come up, I'm gonna roll out, man. Got a whole bunch of stuff to do. I'm about 600 miles away from the house. So hold on a second. Drop this link in here again. Somebody comes up in a couple minutes. I'm gonna be out. Zoom, invite, copy URL. Copy. So if y'all want to come up, come up. If not, I'm gonna get up out of here in like 5 or 10 minutes. I want to thank y'all for coming through, man. What in the world? Hold on a second. Go to the email. Mm, 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 mm. Hey, thanks for the cash app, man. You told me not to say your real name, so I can't. So, but thanks for the cash app, though. All right. You got another minute. If nobody come through, I got to roll out anyway. So, what's going on, Game Changer? It does? What? Participants. It doesn't show you in the background. So, this shit must not be working for nobody then. If can't nobody come in, hold on a second. Oh shit. I do see two people. Hey, what's going on, man? My bad, man. I on my phone it said one thing, on my computer it said another. So let's wait for y'all to come in. Mm-mm-mm. Judge Sig, Judge Zilla and King Sigma, y'all up, man. What's going on?
Hey, thanks for having me on, MOT.
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Oh
Yeah,
man,
it's kind of like, man, when you get these emails from people and they want to debate, it's kind of like you have to like bring them up to speed on the issue that they don't know anything about, and they want to kind of do this all on air for their actual benefit. Like I
Yes,
don't understand this, man.
yes, yes. It's like you have to give them. It's like you have to, right. You have to agree to terms. Not, but I don't mean like in a dueling sense. I mean literally have to list out. It's almost like you have to exchange your arguments and highlight terms and come up with definitions for them because they don't have the actual, like, that's not what that means. That's not what that means. That's not what that means. You know, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So it's like, dude, who did you go to for these definitions? No, it's my own understanding. Okay, your own
Yes,
understanding still had to come from something. And it's
that's the
like,
one that, see, I used to think, I used to think it was people who were actually familiar with postmodernist thought, or not nihilism but skepticism, right? Right, because those are philosophies and those are thought processes, and in which you're taught to question kind of everything, right? Postmodernism being even beyond skepticism, to question even the defined meanings of things, right? But they're not even familiar with those things, they're not even familiar with those concepts. It's just them making shit up on the fly because they think it sounds good, or because they misinterpreted something that they heard from somebody else. It's
Pretty
crazy.
much.
yeah,
I mean, that's one of the things that we've talked about a lot in these spaces. The fact that when you talk about the black majority, there's this, the gynocracy, they define everything based off subjective feelings, subjective standards. So nothing can be solid. Everything has to be very flexible in the sense that there is no such thing as a definition outside of your truth or what you feel. There are no objective standards. There's only subjective standards because it's all built around the female personality, the female outlook, the female's desires. In all the other cultures that I encountered, with my father having been a Muslim and having converted as the older man, before he divorced my mother, um, I've always been in contact with people from other cultures outside of the Native and Black American population. And something that's always stood out to me is that in other cultures that I've encountered, especially with immigrants, for example, no man who adds something of material value, intellectual, moral values, or whatnot, brings stability and well-being to his environment has any problem being rewarded and praised by that community, whether it be just platonic friendship, matrimony, access to the best that that community has to offer. It's not even a question. It's only in the Native Black American majority that these kind of concepts don't apply. And here we are in the middle of this pandemic, and you kind of see that because even now, you see way too many Native Black Americans focus on things that are trivial, things that have no value, even though you have Chicago just now released information, shout out to Dr. Phoenix, showing that 70% of the deaths from coronavirus in Chicago are Black Americans, 40% in Milwaukee, 50% in Detroit. Even as all, and remember, the Health and Human Services is not even providing all of the information because it's so racially imbalanced that
yep,
they're having to be sued right now by like the NAACP and other civil rights organizations just to force these government to release information because what they find out is that on average, at least half of all deaths from coronavirus in the United States are Native Black Americans. So we're playing games while the society is giving out a fucking helicopter drop of cash, and at the same time, while you're the biggest victims of this current pandemic. So I just think that this culture needs to be washed away and that thinking black men have to have the mentality. I like what MOT said, moving forward. We're just going forward. I'm not looking sideways. I'm not looking back. I'm just going forward. I'm going to establish the standards that I want as an individual. And those other individuals that have a similar standard, we can work together. If not, let's go our separate ways. That's it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for the $5 super chat, tree seeker off the wall. Yeah,
But that terrified people. That statistic, and Dr. Phoenix sent out an article. I read it, and I was shocked, man. I couldn't believe that in Chicago, man, 70% of the deaths were Black Americans, and my hometown it was at 50% or so. Even though my hometown only has 25% of Black people, but you're seeing the same trend. And again, they're not releasing the information because of the way that HIPAA works, they're taking down the racial, gender, economic information and stuff, but
Yep.
there's certain rules. And what's happening is that they don't want to release the information because the predominant population that was dying, I think it was like 30, what was it like 37? How many deaths was it so far? Last time you guys, because I know it was like 700,000 cases, confirmed cases in America with only 1% of people being tested.
The last I
And
heard, the last I heard was in the realm of 10,000.
it was 10,000 deaths. Okay, so I know that
In the realm, yeah.
okay, so half of those deaths are Black people for sure, but they're saying that it could be like about 70% are Black American deaths. So while we're sitting around here playing games, trying to wear the cloak of the 1960s, bro, it's 2020. We're in the worst pandemic in modern history, and Black Americans are suffering the most. Yet we're sitting up here having remedial. It's like when you go to college, right?
Yes.
And certain people are at the college level to take certain courses, but then somehow someone got in that isn't even supposed to have graduated from 12th grade. We're having remedial conversations while the rest of the world is moving forward on their health. They're moving forward on getting this cash, and in a survival mode, they're saying this little bit of pie that I can get, I'm gonna get for myself. I'm not worried about what's going on to Black Americans, but we can't work together as Black men. We can't work together on average as Black men and Black women together. I have really come to the conclusion that Black American people, on average, hate each other's guts, man.
Well, keep simple. Look, as far as those deaths, 70, 50, 40, right? It doesn't surprise me in the least. For the first 3 weeks of this shit, well, cats were saying that it was that Black people have a gene that prevents them from getting it. So
I don't even know
if
if to say something like that.
So if you have somebody, if you have, and I'm not saying someone, I'm talking about many people were out there saying it. Many people were on these panels saying it. And then, so if you put that together with the lessened ability for people to do what they're told anyway, and you have people running around with the mentality that they can't get it because they have a special gene that prevents them from getting it. Like, dude, I'm telling you, that's where Hail Cybertron, right? When you see my call sign, Hail Cybertron, that's where it comes from. That comes from the first week of just look, and I'm not even a medical professional. I'm not a biology major. Of me just putting out fires of just ridiculous misinformation that cats were running with.
Yeah, right? It says the death rate is right now 30,915. That's it.
And
as of today.
And then fortunately, Dr. Phoenix came on in a Black Brain Trust, I believe, Black Brain Trust panel show, and started, giving out actual information, and it fell into some people's ears. But again, for 2.5 weeks after that, I was still hearing bullshit.
Well, look at man. Here's the thing. You have a situation where, if you look at the stats
What's
so
going
far,
on, Dr.
700,000.
Shout out Dr. Phoenix in the chat.
Just under 40,000 deaths, and we know that about half of them are Black at least. That is about a 5% kill rate. That's much higher than they predicted. So again, we only have 1% of people tested or something like that. But if you're just taking that small sample size, that's a 5% kill rate. That's why you had Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, and Dr. Drew all come on with Donald Trump this week and say, we're going to reopen America, and we have to accept that 3 to 5% of Americans are going to die. They actually all came on and said that this week, as part of the Reopen America camp, they're acknowledging that if 3 to 5% of Americans must die, that group must be sacrificed for the greater good of the majority. They're willing to take that risk. So people need to just accept shit for what it is. Some guys are like, well, no, it's a conspiracy. Look it, bro. It's not a conspiracy that the economy is shut down. Whatever you think of the pandemic itself,
sure is. It
doesn't matter, because the economic outcome is going to be the same. If you say, well, it's a conspiracy, look it. Your ass being unemployed is not a conspiracy. You're not making your house note is not a conspiracy. You're not making your car payment is not a conspiracy. And Ogun is not coming to save your Black ass. So what you better do, you better figure out how to position yourself correctly to make sure that whatever group you claim that you're representing, whether you be as an individual or you're saying that you're claiming some group, what part of this $6 trillion pie have you gotten so far? And they're debating if they're gonna do one more stimulus. You got one more shot. So they've already produced $6 trillion of magical money in a helicopter drop. You got one more opportunity. They're debating if they're gonna pass one more stimulus bill between May and June. And if you are out there and you claim to represent a group and you claim to be for the community, why aren't you getting no piece of that pie for your said community? People like me, I've already benefited. So far, everything that's happened has benefited me personally. And I expect that it's going to continue to benefit me as long as I continue to survive health wise. So I got to wonder, all these cats talking about they're here to save the community. Where is your political action committee that's down there in Washington, D.C., meeting with Nancy Pelosi, meeting with Mitch McConnell, meeting with Charles Schumer to say, hey, you guys are printing out $1 trillion by the week now. Where is our piece of it? They're nowhere to be seen. They're on the internet still panhandling for a few dollars while there's groups that are new to this country that are demanding that they get $6,000 universal basic income payments, that they get free insurance and things like that. So that's where I'm at with it. You know, it's a matter of who are you representing and how are you fighting for your interests. If you're not out there getting these politicians to listen to you, to make sure that you get some of that, the benefits of this possibly last stimulus, I don't want to hear nothing from you ever again. Period. Don't talk to me at all. I don't want to hear from you. Don't send me these niggas links to their channels or anything. You got one chance. The worst economic recession in 100 years, possibly in U.S. history, and these cats are not showing you any tangibles.
Well, yeah. Look. You know, there's all those black channels right now, right? Showing somebody how to showing somebody how to create a profit and loss statement, right? Because profit and loss statement is what you're going to need to get the EIDL.
Yeah, I had somebody who sent me an email saying that don't you know the government is giving stimulus checks to people? All you have to do is have an EIN. I'm like, delete. Why in the fuck would I even want to even respond to somebody who think they're going to get extra stimulus because they have an EIN shelf corporation? You're just going to walk in there with an EIN and somehow they're just going to give you money. I'm like, this is the level of stupidity that you're dealing with people here. And it's like, how come you ain't talking about it? I'm like, I can't talk about something that doesn't exist and that is not true. But this person, quote unquote, felt that this was so important that he was going to tell everybody about it. I'm like, where's your platform spouting this shit? Like,
Right.
like, and it's like, well, you don't care about black. I'm like, dude, I already have my own bit. Dude, I don't give a shit about people who can't run their business right. That's not the business that I'm in. Is helping people run their business right. Like, I'm not that shit.
Well, it's not a business; it's a charity, Amanda tomorrow, because nobody's paying you
Correct.
to do
And
it.
it's like,
They want you to do it, but they don't want to pay you for it.
Well, okay, so I have a question then. All right. So when you talk about these community, soapbox talkers, where was the outcry against the fact that you had a large share of black fathers out there who are currently under child support and being mistreated by the legal system that their queen is backing when the government came out and said, y'all ain't getting no stimulus money. They treated the black father, who just happens to be unemployed, possibly on arrears, they gave him the same status as they gave the undocumented worker.
Yep.
Now, the undocumented workers were banned from the last stimulus bill from receiving that $1,200 check. But guess what? Their advocates are fighting hard as hell right now that if there is going to be a fourth stimulus package, that they're going to get their shot. But guess what? Those same black men that are out there that were denied the stimulus money because of child support, those black queens are still saying they don't deserve a fucking penny. Give it to the woman or don't give it to anybody. They would rather see you rot in hell and starve to death than to see you get a measly $1,200 to pay your April or May rent. But I don't hear anyone talking about that, even though you got undocumented workers, illegal criminal aliens in this country who they're fighting for to say, You need to help out these people. But no one cares about that father who's being denied seeing his child and under the thumb of the law because of his black queen. That black queen is laughing at you. I saw memes where they were laughing at those men who are out there trying to be with their children, but they're struggling because it's a competitive environment. They're being denied unemployment, whatever. But those same women are laughing, saying, I'm glad that he ain't getting anything. But these dudes are silent. So that's why I just don't even take this shit. I think that this pandemic is going to have the same long-term positive impact that it had 100 years ago. And it's going to wash away a lot of that redneck culture. And it's going to allow the thinking brothers that survive it to move forward and create something new. And I just think that's where it's time to focus
Yeah,
on creating.
separate from these people, man. I'm like, dude, we don't care about the same thing.
Nope.
A lot of people care about this nondescript person who don't care about them,
Not
and
at
that's
all.
what this this sector is actually set up for. It was set up for pandering to this person and everybody else who don't want to make progress in society. That's what you have to look at. This is it. This is what it's been. Like there is no um, George Washington Carver debate here. There's no debate. Not here. A lot of people don't want progress, and that's fine. You have to be totally fine with it. Like I had to be totally fine with it before I moved on from the concept of thinking that this stuff is going to work with my help.
They want progress. They just don't want to participate in it.
Oh, of course
They
not.
I
they
don't
they
think,
they, they, they want to they want to spectate the progress of the progress.
I don't think they want progress, bro. I think that, I don't think anyone naturally wants change. I think that only a select few in societies, no matter where you're looking at today, 100 years ago, black, white, I think that on average, it's the minority of a population that forces change upon the people. And the people, they're resistant to it, but they're flexible because most people are followers. And I just think that's how it is. I think that there's always a small group that forces the issue, and then the rest of the population goes along because they believe that eventually it's in their best interest.
I, I,
That's just
I
how
would
it works. I
I
don't
would
think
agree.
there's this
I,
big
I I would
thing.
I would actually agree with you, Sigma, except the fact that the reason why I on 90% of that I agree with you. The 10% I don't is because they're aging, and as they're aging, that ticket
Mhm.
that chit amount is reducing and reducing and reducing, and they don't like the idea that they're gonna have to double up Golden Girl style.
But they're dying. But here's the thing: when you talk about that aging thing, look at who's most vulnerable right now in the pandemic.
Yeah,
You already have them already wanting to privatize things like Social Security. They were already going to shrink the welfare state. So think about it: you got the pandemic, and you already had trends going. So the group that you're referring to, you have Trump and other politicians and celebrities coming on TV saying that, "Hey, everyone, it's okay if 3 to 6 million people die." And the most vulnerable people that they're talking about are the group that you're mentioning. So to me, it's like, I
well,
think that society saying that we are willing to sacrifice the people that you're talking about in order to go forward. That's just how I'm just being very Machiavellian. I'm telling you, like
yeah,
Trump, they're very Machiavellian about this. I've never seen anything like this, bro. They came on TV all week saying they're like, predictive programming thing where they're telling people, hey, yeah, 3 to 6 million people might die, but it's okay. We got to reopen America. So they've already begun the seasoning process of getting people comfortable with the idea that 3 to 6 million people will most likely have to be sacrificed in order to stop the economy from sinking further and further.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's a pure understanding that right. Again, this wasn't going to be sustainable. This this whole self quarantine thing, and it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable in the least. So it's going to have to because again, people keep treating this like it's an avalanche. It's not an avalanche. You are going to be dealing with this for the next 5 to 7 years. That's what's going to happen.
yeah.
Well,
This thing is going to be around. Right? You like again, earliest signs, earliest possible signs, fast tracking everything for a vaccine. We're not even talking about cure here, but for a vaccine. to be functional and related to this is 18 months, right? There's therapeutics that are going to happen in the middle there and beyond there, but this is something, this is just something that is now. Just like flu is, just like flu is, just like E. coli is. This is just something that is.
But it's nothing
Yeah.
new though. It's nothing new. And one of the things that I've been trying to, I've been trying to see how many people would figure out that this is just a repeat of the Spanish flu.
Right.
Not enough people have actually sat down, studied the impacts of the Spanish flu. I
No.
took the time and I took a whole week. I went back and read whatever I could on the. I wanted to know what happened between 1918 and 1920, and then what happened in the decade following that. And there was very little information on the impacts of the Spanish flu, but the Spanish flu killed at a minimum 675,000 Americans and about 40 to 50 million people worldwide. So it was
Oh,
about
sure.
1%
Yeah.
kill rate, right? But I was more focused on, okay, we know who died, but how did the people that survived go forward? And what we saw is that, even then, Black people were the biggest victims of the Spanish flu. I haven't heard many people say that at all. That Blacks were, because there was a correlation between poverty, bad health, and unfortunately, we know that in America there is a strong correlation over the last 100 years between race and poverty.
Right.
So the Spanish flu biggest victims were Black then, but this is what hit me the hardest: the fact that certain states were hit harder than other states. Right? How Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania was the hardest hit city during the Spanish flu, and like Maryland, I think it was Pennsylvania, Maryland, and then the best ones were the safest states were Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Michigan had the lowest kill rate of all the different states. So I was just looking at a bunch of this information, but in all the scenarios, Black people were the most vulnerable.
Yeah. Well,
And,
and again, even at the time, again, right, because distancing, right, transmitting communicable diseases, right,
hold on one
distance
second. Hold on one
is
second. I just want
favorable.
to answer. Hold on one second, just my bad. So the brother says this is not the Spanish flu. You're sounding a bit ignorant. But see, that's the problem now, see the truth, because
What?
history is there for a reason. You got to go by what happened during that pandemic, because that was the worst pandemic ever in U.S. history because it killed so many people. So how you could say, well, this is not the Spanish flu? Well, you go back to that history to
He
see
can't.
what
And the
the worst.
numbers are nearly the same and commensurate in both
He's
areas.
he's he's trying to be a literalist. You're referencing this is a pandemic like the Spanish flu was a pandemic. He's trying to be literalist and saying that you're saying that this
No,
is
that's not what
Spanish
I'm
flu
saying.
too.
That's not what I'm
Exactly.
saying. What I'm
Exactly.
saying is that the health specialists and the economists and the politicians, what do you think they're doing? They're going back and looking at what the domino effect was on the Spanish flu in their economy then and how they contained it then. That's why you got a lot of the social distancing rules that you have now, because what happened is that back then, a lot of cities they closed their schools, they closed their churches, but they didn't close restaurants, they didn't close gyms and things like that. And it helped spread the disease. So what they found out this time around by studying how United States responded 100 years ago is that we have to close down everything that's not essential. So there's definitely lessons to be had from the past. So no, it's not actually ignorant to look at what you have to study and then go from there. Every situation is going to be new, but there are certain things that have happened in the past that give you an idea of what not to do.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
sure. Yeah.
But sometimes I think that cats in the chat just, I like to respond to their questions because I don't take offense at the questions, but I think that they want to be heard. But at the end of the day, if you don't study the things that we've learned from the past, you're gonna just keep making the mistakes over and over. You've heard no one on this panel or any other panel say it's the exact same thing. But the Spanish flu
it's
so far was far worse, if anything.
so yeah, well, and I anticipate that this is going to be probably an order of magnitude worse than the Spanish flu because of the increase of population, because of the increase of population stacked up on top of each other.
Yeah, definitely. What's going on, panel? How you doing,
So
MOT?
what's going on? What's going on?
Judge,
Hey, what's
chilling,
happening?
chilling. Well, just to add a little something as far as the Black community goes, we all know about the obesity rate amongst the BW. But one thing we're not really speaking on here is that obesity rate amongst brothers as well.
Hmm.
Especially the Magos and the number. Just the easiest correlation between all these underlying conditions is the obesity fact because everything comes from comes from obesity like diabetes, hypertension, all these other conditions people are dying from being attached to COVID-19. And we're just like looking the other way, like, but at the same time we got the whole community out here seal clapping, be looking like Lizzo or Lonnie Love.
Well, I would, okay, the information that I've been able to gather, not that I have any special sources, but the information I've been able to gather is this. Again, COVID doesn't kill anybody. COVID causes about your body to respond to it, your immune system to respond to it. Some people, right, a small percentage of the people who respond to it, they have symptomologies that their body responds to, but they respond to them in negative fashion, right? You get enlarged. You can get enlargement of some of your pulmonary organs, i.e., your lungs or your heart, right? When it happens with your lungs, it's going to cause an effect that you're going to get a filling of fluid because of breakdown of cellular tissues. That's why they need the respirators, right? So if you have if you have conditions that are related
Pause for now. Pause for now. Go ahead.
to
Go ahead.
specifically most likely to pulmonary conditions, i.e. being overweight, i.e. emphysema, i.e. high blood pressure, i.e. diabetes that messes with your immune system as well, right? Those types of things that can be issues all by themselves. Once you introduce the catalyst of COVID to start uh, causing your immune system to react to things, therein is where the problem is going to happen for those people whom are ultimately having severe complications and or dying from this, right? You don't die from COVID, you die from organ failure.
And it was the same thing with the Spanish flu. And this is why I was trying to mention to the chat that, again, there's another parallel. When you study the Spanish influenza, people didn't die from the Spanish flu. They died from the complications of their immune systems in relations to that certain disease at that time. And how they ended up handling that is very critical to how the governments are trying to handle this thing now. And even when you look at reports from like the government agencies that were warning that something like this could happen, like let's say 10 years ago, they were saying that the United States and other nations were not prepared as they should be for a pandemic. So this is something that they've been thinking about for at least the last 20 years seriously, but they hadn't put the money into preparation. And then it hit for whatever reason that it hit, and now people are suffering. And there were certain social impacts that caught my attention, like the Spanish flu being in 1919. There was two other social things going on globally and domestically. World War One was at its peak at that time, but people forget that that was the year of like Red Summer with a lot of racial tension. And I was looking at that because I was trying to figure out, okay, how will this survival mode impact the races and their tensions between each other? And if history is any kind of preface for what could happen based on what happened before, I suspect that a year from now, there's going to be a lot, a lot of racial tension in America, especially now that we're finding out that the majority of people are dying from this disease and are getting the least help are Black Americans. And this happened before as well. This led to the Red Summer of 1919. For you all that have never heard of it, that's when many hundreds of Blacks were killed in race riots in the United States. And some of this had to do with World War One, but a lot of it had to do with the tensions created by the pandemic of 1919
Yeah.
and how that impacted like workforces. Because remember, it was the economic impact that was always worse than the virus itself, seeing that there was a demand for labor and a lot of white people were not comfortable with blacks coming into their work environments. You had a lot of
Yep.
migration that helped promote a lot of migration because of the World War One already had a labor shortage. Then you had the pandemic come through. So what happened is that they had to get people in those jobs. So they started going and recruiting people like my grandfather's generation to come work in a lot of these facilities that had never had black people. So the tension was raised because of the demand for labor. The same thing's going to happen this time. There's going to be a demand for labor, and people that are not used to working in certain environments are going to be uncomfortable. So it's just something you should always look at history just for what it is. But every situation is new. But there are some lessons that you can learn from the past, man. I guarantee you that a year from now, if things keep going the way that they are, here's three things that we learned from the Spanish flu. It came in three waves, and I'm seeing the same damn thing happening now. So those that are in the chat, those on the panel, remember that you heard it here. If I'm correct on my prediction, there will be three waves of this coronavirus. In 1918, the Spanish flu came in these three waves. March 1918 to the summer 1918 was the first wave. That was not as big as what the second wave was, which just came that fall. So that fall, the most deaths happened during that second wave between fall 1918 and December 1918. Then there was a drop, and then it had one more wave that came in the spring of what would have been 1919. I'm predicting that the same damn thing is going to happen this time, that we're going to see our first wave because we only got 1% testing between March and let's say June or July. Then everyone's going to be forced, the economy is going to be open back up over the next 3 months. Then we're going to get like this huge devastating waves of once people get more and more testing and more deaths in the fall. And then there'll be one more final wave, spring 2021. And so basically summer 2021, we will return to normalcy. You heard it here first.
Yeah, and Trey, I wasn't saying what I said to negate what you were saying. I was saying it to flesh out what you were saying.
Oh yeah, I get it. It's just one other thing with that is we've seen the thinking black men like ourselves, and other groups of thinking black men are more inclined to be focused on their health, their size, and for their women, their stargates, their partners, whatever you want to call them, are more focused on standards. And you see thinking even thinking men among other races are very inclined to standards and be like, no, I don't believe in this fat stuff. It's not because you're fat. It's because of the underlying conditions that the weight and size leads to. And this is, kind of being played off. And we get those excuses and we see them all the time as if, oh, there's skinny, unhealthy, skinny people. I got my blood work tested and, I'm fat, but my doctor said I'm only healthy. And yeah, we just got to completely just walk away and turn our
Well,
backs on those folks.
well,
No, I mean, if they want to do that, let them. Like, dude, listen, man. We
yeah,
just need to have a split where people who actually want to be American citizens and who don't want to be worried about what some nondescript woman and her hair pattern of the day is the actual majority conversation. You have to leave those people alone.
yeah,
They're. They're COVID like what 1970 something. So no,
yeah. No, it's crazy again because I it's my estimation that this fat acceptance that I what brought on the fat acceptance was AIDS. Because remember when AIDS was started to be a big thing, cats would point to the fact that they were overweight to say that they didn't have the HIV, they didn't have the hive, right?
yeah.
Right? Women and dudes would be like, no, he can't have the hive, he's fat. She can't have the hive, she's fat, right? Because all the people with the hive are supposed to be skinny because they're dying, right? And then from there you get from there, it's a couple of decades of acceptance that way and promotion that way, and then you have Lizzo, right? you know, it's just it's another illustration of that's what happened. Like again, that's where look we want to stay out of groupthink, right? Because groupthink creates echo chambers, right? But you also have to get out of wrong. You also have to recognize wrong think. You know, and see how wrong think rolls downhill and what it turns into. You know, and I'm not saying wrong think is in the thought policing situation. Just like no, this shit is stupid. But again, that's why I've come up with Hail Cybertron because it's like, fine, if you all want to believe stupid fucking shit,
Let
go
them.
ahead. Go ahead.
We don't need
Go
them.
ahead.
We don't need them, dude. Don't need them. COVID's gonna happen. They're gonna go to a
Go,
COVID party.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Hell Cybertron. You can't fill up the Grand Canyon with bodies. Let's go.
yeah.
we don't
All right,
need
man. Well, let me get up out of here.
we don't need to make
Well,
mass graves because we've got the Grand Canyon.
yeah, correct. All right, man. Well, let everybody get their last words before we get up out of here. Trey.
Nothing much. Thanks for letting me up here, and everybody stay safe out there.
Yeah, certainly. All right, man. Thanks for coming through, Judge.
No, I gave my last right there. We didn't. we,
All right,
yeah, we don't need mass graves because we have the Grand Canyon.
that's cool. All right, King Chicken.
All right, MOT man, brother, you get you some sleep and be safe out there on the roads. Salute to the brothers in the chat and those watching. The best thing that you could do right now is you got time on your hand. Nothing's stopping you from going and do your research yourself. Don't take anything I say as God's word. Just go do the research yourself, and you'll find out that the more that you know, the better prepared you will be for whatever's coming down in the next 12 months. I mean, if you call yourself a thinking black man, if there was ever a time to climb that ladder, it's now. Because for all that people are afraid of, just remember this one thing, and I'll leave with this: chaos is a ladder. Do not be afraid of the climb. So, with that, peace to everybody. You have a good night, MLT.
All right, cool. All right, man. Thanks everybody for coming through. And the match we're all here. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and y'all guys have a really nice night. All right, later. All right.